Hi everyone, welcome back to Farrand Film. Today I'm bringing you my third and final video from this year's Grimmfest festival, and this is my review of the film Bloodstar that aired on the Sunday night, the closing night, and sort of serendipity, whatever it is that you want to call it, really good timing. The film is now available for you to buy on digital on-demand services in the UK and I believe in the US, and it was quite apt that the film was on the Sunday night, the day before the release, and all that kind of stuff. So this is I was going to say it was a revenge film. It's not necessarily a revenge film. It's more like a road movie. It's more like a horror road movie. And it stars John Schwab as Sheriff Bilstein, who is a very, very underhanded antagonist. Brittany Camacho as Bobby, who is this sort of gutsy, female protagonist, and an array of sort of supporting characters, but essentially it is those two that are encompassing everything that goes on in the narrative. So what I'm going to do, as I've done with the other ones, is I'm going to show you the trailer for the film, and then I'm going to share my interview with John, the film's main antagonist, with Lawrence Giacomelli, the film's director, and with Victoria Taylor, the film's producer.
Bobby, please don't do this.
Don't do what? I'm just going home.
Don't go back there. He hit you.
I'm not having this conversation.
Husband trouble?
No, officer.
It's sheriff, not officer.
Goodbye, weirdo. Oh, hey, officer. Everything all right?
Turn off your engine.
Ma'am, you okay? I think this cop is extorting me.
Seems you met the Honorable Sheriff Bilstein.
So he is a real cop.
Last girl I seen needing the ATM said she needed it to pay the sheriff.
You know what they say, want to see a man's true colors, give him a badge and a little bit of power.
I'm in trouble.
How far will you go?
You flirt your way into this mess, flirt your way out.
Why are you doing this?
Yes, okay. So Lawrence, just to begin with, your feature film debut, am I right in saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah? Written alongside with Victoria and George Kelly, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah? Where did the initial idea come from?
So
Guilty.
Yeah, no, I know. It's a funny one, isn't it? As I said to your colleague earlier, basically from COVID lockdown, we run another production company, and when everything shut down, it gave us that time to really sit down and think about making a movie. And I think that the whole experience of COVID at that time, it brought out a real feeling of claustrophobia. And a very unsettled time, I think, emotionally. And at that point as well, there was a couple of big stories that had been in the news a few months before, a year before, about two police officers that had used their power to abuse the vulnerable, ultimately. And I think that those two stories really stuck with me, and they stuck with me. I think because of the isolation we were in during COVID and the vulnerability that came with that it grew, and the idea of this vulnerability grew in me. And so I think when we started writing the story, we were looking for a monster, and I think after discussing the content coming up in our discussions together, I think we both came up with the thought that this would be an unbelievable monster. Yeah. Somebody who is out there to protect the vulnerable, but ultimately, was using his power to prey, to prey on the vulnerable. So I think that, as a monster, that's a very frightening thought. That's where it was born from, really. And then in terms of where the story went and where we set, that had a lot of different factors to do with it. Budget, where do we want to shoot it? What I knew Lawrence wanted as a director. You know, I knew that he wanted to shoot in America. I knew that he was in love with the American landscapes. It only made sense to then put the monster, you know, this sheriff monster in that American landscape. And who doesn't want to shoot with a Mustang?
Wow.
So I think there, you know, there was a lot of sort of elements as well of just sort of picking all the things that I knew he would really like to shoot, and also just how to make the story, very resonant of the stories and movies that he loves too. So we were talking before about the Jaws. You know, Spielberg's Duel.
Yeah.
You know, Lawrence is all about, you know, the tension, creating tension in the story. So all those elements together, you know, that's how it brought about the story of Bloodstar.
So with that sort of small idea that came the story and came the film, Lawrence, when did you jump on in terms of scripts and things like that?
So yeah, I mean, we started there with the theme, which is abuse of power and this monster who would have control. And then, as Victoria said, then we're thinking, well, where do we want to shoot this? You know, because you can have a cop in a city, right?
Yeah.
But we're making a first feature film, so we have to make choices based also on on the reality of the budget and you know, the amount of days we can spend. And so then we looked at doing it as a desert cop in the desert, because we've got vast, beautiful locations. Not too complicated in terms of production to organise that, compared to shooting in the city where you've got people everywhere.
Yeah.
So that really was the consideration. You know, where can we tell this story, make it effective and you know, really engaging to the viewer, but something we can actually produce ourselves. You know, something we can actually get out there and actually make a movie. So,
were you really conscious of that when you were writing the script, thinking about, is 100%. That too far? Do we need to pull back a little bit? Yeah.
So it started in the car. So we were basically going to do everything just around the car on the road, and then it escalates.
Yeah.
You know, you get other ideas, and it's got to go here, it's got to go there, and then, you know, that's where you then have to sort of weigh up: can you still do it or not? And we did that. We kind of said, well, let's push it a little bit further, but still we kept the whole shoot in 10 days.
Yeah.
So even though we had, you know, 5 locations rather than 1 location, we just pulled them all together, made a very, very kind of comprehensive schedule, and somehow it levels out.
It all managed.
Yeah.
We got there in the end.
Yeah.
John, you've played a wide and varied back catalogue of different roles.
Sure.
Some heroes, some villains.
Yeah.
A lot of different things along the way.
And Teletubbies. I mean,
I wasn't going to mention it.
Did you know? I didn't know that. Yeah, man. My nieces and nephews, I'm a freaking hero.
I mean, the one that I mentioned last night to my wife was, I was like, hey, this guy's done the narration for Wife Swap.
That's right.
That was another one that came out yesterday.
I did 6 seasons of Wife Swap. Yeah. So I'd be like, people go, what are you doing today? I was like, Wife Swap. I'm like, really? No.
Not doing Wife Swap, but doing.
My wife is just behind you.
We're all looking at that.
And this, as Victoria very nicely mentioned and sort of set up, this embodies both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a role in society that we would assume is safe and secure, but actually there's a bit of a protagonist to it, or an antagonist even to it. Yeah. So how was it for you approaching that sort of nuanced dynamic as an actor?
Yeah, it's really easy to go into something and be, film thin on character as to just the guy's just a psychopath. Like, his psychopath is great, but getting into why, it's very hard to. It's hard to kind of get enough in there to go, why would this person do this? But you have to know that as an actor to get into it, because if not, I just think it becomes one note. Mm-hmm. So why does he do the things he does? What is it about women in his past that is, what was the abuse that made? I had to kind of think about these things before going into playing it, because it's I wanted to have a bit of charm. I wanted him to be, on the surface, the person you trust the most. And given a batch that people that are going to be scared of authority anyway, Brittany's character is, it's a. I think she's kind of anti-authority anyway. There's a little bit of that in there. So there's not a lot of trust in there. But I didn't want her to not trust me from the start. And Lawrence is very, you were kind of. I want to pinpoint exactly where it is that you just do that ever so small switch. It's just like taking a license from somebody. It's not going to give me that thing. It's like, I'm just going to hold on to this for you. It's a completely different thing. But I mean, the short answer is I love playing these kind of roles, right? And it's being the charming person that you've never.
I think it's also. Sorry, John.
Go for it.
I just got to say something.
Go.
I think it's also a less is more situation,
yes,
right? So that's how we played it. We just played it in a kind of very natural way, and he is charming in the end, although a bit weird, and but still engaging, and that's. And he would keep saying to me, "So
you just described me in a
yeah." And John would just keep saying to me, "So I'm going to bring it up a little bit in this one. I'm going to bring it up a little," and that's all we did. We just kept bringing it up bit by bit by bit, and that's what happens in the narrative, in the whole arc of the film. It just keeps going up.
Slowly becomes a bigger thing. Yeah,
I think because when you watch this, the openings, the choice of director's choice given. Let's show the monster. And that right at the beginning. Yeah. Again, you go back to Jaws, you don't see the monster. It's super calm. And there's a jerk of a thing. You go, what the hell was that? That kind of is. You don't see the monster. You see a super calm, super still desert, and that plays. That's exactly what Sheriff Bilstein is completely calm on top. You had to, Lawrence did have to pull me back every now and then because sometimes you go, I want to go for it. No, let's just
not yet. Now's not the time.
Yeah.
Totally. In terms of cultural touchstones, then, so we mentioned Jaws, Jewel, things like that. Are there any others that, especially to evoke that setting of the desert, that came to mind when you were filming?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Wolf Creek, which is a film that I particularly like. For the similar sort of reason, which I hope the notes that we've hit in our film, which is. It's got that kind of slow, almost effortless build. It's got a monster who there's threat there, but actually he's a funny guy. He's just almost like a normal guy, and that's kind of where I feel we had a bit of a parallel.
Yeah. John, just again in terms of the role and things like that, so you were talking about how you didn't want to just be a sort of one note psychopath, because I completely agree with you. Like, as somebody so I'm a film teacher, that's my sort of occupation. Like, we're looking at Joker at the minute with my A-level class, and we're talking about how it's not just a case that he is this, there's always a reason as to why he's doing certain things. Were you able to bring some of your own ideas into the role, and were Lawrence and Victoria quite happy for you to sort of adapt on that character?
Yeah, I mean, it was crucial. We met early on. I think it was 2022 we met in the summer and started talking about character. That was 9 months before anything happened, and just pinpointing, does he speak with a Southern accent? Is it New Mexico? And just because if you speak with a Southern accent, you're suddenly in Deliverance territory where you go. These small things that people, audience members, will tag onto any choice, accent-wise, stature-wise. And so I was like, I was going. I'm going to the gym. Lawrence went, okay, John. I don't know if you remember. It's like, don't get too fit. And I went home and I told my wife, I was like, Jesus. I don't have to go to the gym for a while. But it's really important. All the little things. Yeah. If you come from the less is more school, the littlest things get big.
Totally. And I think it's a case of doing the rehearsals and the read through, just for everyone to sort of learn what those characters would do, and then you're answering your own questions about what they should be doing, where they should be going, because you get to know them yourself. Just through the practice of reading the script.
I think for me it was a beautiful balance between the two of you, because I think also, again, this was our first feature, and I think we just really lucked out having you, such an experienced actor. Absolutely. I think if we hadn't had you, I'm not quite sure how aware that, because there were moments where we weren't totally sure, and you were like, right guys, this is I think how we've got to do it, and this is how I'm going to play it, and we'd be like, right, go for it, John. You do it. We just trusted you completely.
The pink tutu went out the door though. You didn't go for that one.
Never worked.
In the torture scene, I was kind of.
All you can do is try.
Yeah, exactly. No,
so where did you come to find John? Was that an easy search, or was that quite a difficult?
did get lucky.
Serendipity.
We got a mutual friend.
Oh, okay.
A guy that we work with a lot, a good friend of ours in Brighton, and we were talking to him about the movie one day, and about finding characters, and he just said, "Oh, I've got the guy for you."
So I know a psychopath.
We were like,
I know the guy.
oh yeah, who? And anyway, so yeah, he said, John, check him out, have a look, get him down for a meeting, and we were sold.
Well, I mean, hold on. So no.
I was John.
I wasn't going to say that. No. So I said to Paul, I don't think John's going to do our movie, because you've got to understand, I haven't even made a short film. Okay. John is a seasoned actor, extremely talented, and so I said, Paul, I don't think John's going to do it. And he said, well, look, just
ask him.
You don't know. Ask him. So we sent him the script, and the next day he came down to see us from London. We were in Brighton, and so
we were really nervous.
Yeah,
we were so nervous.
No.
I think we didn't know where to come at. The thing is, with first-time filmmakers, you don't know where are we in this process, and it was just as much as I remember going home and I love them. Like it's just that same. If we're gonna go out in the desert for 2 weeks and bust our balls and asses trying to make something, we've got to like each other. And it was.
Also, you've got to believe in the script, and that's my point.
100%.
So he came down the next day, then I know, then I know the script is good.
I was just
it gives me a lot of confidence in what we're doing.
Is he going to want
Strength
to do
of the script, but then I think don't do yourself down. You've got a huge ream of back catalogue with commercials and things like that. Like, don't just sort of look over that.
I went online and looked at Beast. I went on to say what is Lawrence shoot like?
Yeah.
And I run everything past that. So my wife's behind you, Adam, and she says, "What's the character like?" Total asshole. Like, this guy's a psychopath. She's like, when are you going to do something funny? But I said, this is going to look beautiful. If the story makes sense, it's going to look incredible. And it does. This is one of the most beautiful first features you're ever going to watch. That's not me blowing sunshine. It's just the truth.
I feel like I should just stop there. But so last one from me. It's the question that I like to ask. What's happening next? Do we know? Have you got an idea? What do you want to do next?
So what I know is happening next is Monday. It's being released for download
tomorrow.
In the UK tomorrow.
Yes,
which is tremendously exciting.
Yeah, crazy.
And hopefully it's going to sort of spread its way. I know it's been sold in Germany and France and a couple of other territories, and so it's those sales are happening.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening with Bloodstar. And obviously, as a debut feature, until that's out there, then no one's seen it. So
more films though.
More, yeah. We've got bucket loads of them.
Yeah. You're stuck in now, Victoria. That's in now.
We've got a very nice sci-fi horror thriller.
Interesting.
That we want to make.
We're just coming to the end of finishing the script.
Particularly unique monster.
What about yourself, John? Have you got anything?
I'm open to all offers. Olivia Bell Management, 0207.
Thank you all very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Okay, so that was my interview with the cast, with one member of the cast, John Schwab, with the film's director, Lawrence Giacomelli, and with the film's producer, Victoria Taylor. Now, when it came to watching the film itself, it ended up being quite a nice screening in that I ended up sitting a couple of seats down from Lawrence and Victoria as they were watching it, and it was quite nice to every now and again glance over and see their reactions to certain things that were happening, and then shaking them by the hand at the end of it and all that kind of stuff, and then seeing John again after I've just seen him as probably one of the most brutal villains that you'll see on screen this year. So Sheriff Bilstein is a swine, and he admitted that himself, that this was the screening was John's first time seeing it and seeing the film all the way through, and he referred to himself as a bit of an a-hole, and I think the audience was sort of encompassing in that, and John was so lovely in the interview that it was bizarre seeing that afterwards. So basically the film is set around Bobby, who's traveling through a rural town in America. They shot it near California. John referred to it as Breaking Bad country, and she seems to be fleeing a family essentially, or she's fleeing a sort of relationship that she's in, and she comes across Sheriff Bilstein. Now Bilstein initially is quite charming, sort of, he's doing his job, he can take a bit of a joke, he can take a laugh, but he means what he says. And then naturally, as referred to in the interview, it just increases ever so slightly, ever so gradually towards the end of the film. There are a couple of twists in there, there are a couple of narrative turns in there, which obviously I'm not going to spoil here. You can go and buy the film yourself on digital download, and you can sort of watch it and go through the narrative like I did. There are a couple of things towards the end where you almost sort of fall into fairly sort of familiar territory in terms of a horror film. Lawrence mentioned Wolf Creek was definitely a cultural touchstone. I definitely got that towards the end of the film. I was like, there's definite a Wolf Creek element here. Mainly when the sun began to come down in the film, because I found it quite nice that during the film, you start off, I would argue, probably more towards the morning, and then it's essentially all taking place over the course of a day, and what would we assume become a course of a day, the average day in Sheriff Bilstein's life. And again, it gets pretty gruesome towards the end. It doesn't hold its punches. It doesn't pull its punches. And there are certain elements to it that definitely surprised me. There were two moments in particular where a lady sat behind me gasped, and I don't think I've ever heard an audience gasp before. I've definitely heard. I've seen people cry. I've seen people laugh. A gasp is a different one, and it shocked her, But I very much enjoyed it. It's a very, very solid, tight narrative. It does everything that it needs to do. It doesn't outstay its welcome whatsoever. The budget, again, was a relatively small budget, but they did so much with it. They shot it in 10 days, and it's unbelievable what they managed to achieve in that time. There's a lot of narrative tells in terms of show don't tell, in terms of mise en scène that they're doing as well, which I really enjoyed to see. And again, it was such a joy to see it, especially with and knowing that there are people who are involved in it around as well. But I enjoyed it immensely. So for me to sort of wrap up my Grimmfest coverage, very, very successful year at Grimmfest this year. I only saw 3 of the films. I don't have time to watch everything. I know that there are people who will have sat and watched all of those films. I very much enjoyed Self-Driver. I very much enjoyed Bloodstar. I loved Bleeding. And from what I hear, there are other things that aired as part of the festival, things like Traumatica, which I hear very, very good things about. I will look forward to catching those when I can. But we're in October. I feel a little bit horrored out, but I'm going watching The Substance later this week, so that needs to pass through. And then, we've got Terrifier on the way, and we've got Smile on the way as well. So we'll get through October. We'll get through the spooky month. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. If you've not done so already, go back and check out my reviews and interviews of Self-Driver and of Bleeding. And if you're interested in Bloodstar, go and find it at your preferred digital outlet. Stay safe, look after each other, and I will see you next time.